Good morning, afternoon, and evening, all. This is Yorkie with episode 6 of my in-depth track guide series, and this week we are going to be taking a look at Monaco in Monte Carlo, and we are going to be following the usual video format with starting off with the breakdown, then moving into the hot laps, and finally the setups to follow. So without further ado, let's get on with it. So just before we gain control of the car, we're going to shift the brake bias into the rear, ready for turn 1. Coming out through the exit of the corner, you want to start draining the curves and get the DRS open at the activation point. Bring the car out to the left hand side to maximise that curves usage before the start finish line, and also to open up turn 1. Coming into the braking zone now, our braking point is at the dark skid markings on the floor just in front of the car here. We're going to be shifting from 7th gear down into 2nd, and you want to be very careful as in the latter part of the braking zone there's quite a big bump right at the turning point to the corner. So try and get your braking done before that. As we come over the bump, we're going to start to turn in, and you basically want to be running the curb on the inside. You want to take a little bit off on the inside as well, but you don't want to obviously take too much. You want to keep at least 2 wheels within the confines of the track at all times. Our apex speed should be about 85 miles per hour, which equates to 135 kilometers per hour. And pretty much as soon as you run over this curb, you want to unwind the wheel, bring the throttle back in, shift up into 3rd gear, get as close to the wall as you can on the outside as possible, and drain about 10% of your curves as you run up through turn 2 into turn 3. Our braking point is at the zebra crossing just here on the floor in front of the car. We're going to be shifting from 7th gear down into 4th. It's a relatively short braking zone, but we're going to be trail braking ever so slightly and turning at the same time. But basically you want to take a relatively wider entry and then bring it back in tight about mid-corner to get double apex throughout the duration of this corner. So the first apex is at the end of the curbing just here. Your apex speed should be about 115 miles per hour, which equates to 185 kilometers per hour. This is the apex that you really need to nail and is the most important apex. The second one is more just to kind of brush the inside of the wall, try and open up turn 4. So coming through turn 3 now, coming into our second apex just there, and as we come into turn 3 you're basically just going to shift down 1 gear, lift off the throttle ever so slightly and throw the car into turn 4. Our apex speed should be about 115 miles per hour, which equates to 185 kilometers per hour, and you should be balancing the throttle from this point. You basically just want to get as close to the wall on the inside as much as possible, and then obviously unwind the wheel and let's get as close to the wall on the outside as possible as well to try and maximise the speed coming down through the end of the first sector into turn 5. So turn 5 hairpin then, our braking point is at the end of the shadow on the right hand side there. We're going to be shifting from 5th gear down into 1st gear. This is basically at the exact point where the sector split is, so as soon as you see that sector split come up on the top right hand side of your screen, that's when you want to start braking. So shifting down into 1st gear, you basically want to throw the car in and you want to get as close to the wall on the inside. Your apex point should be here at the start of the Pirelli board on the inside barrier there. Your apex speed should be about 50 miles per hour, which equates to 80 kilometers per hour. And as you come through this point here on this apex and continue throughout the duration of the corner, you basically just want to start bringing the throttle back in. You want to unwind the wheel ever so slightly and basically shift up into 2nd gear. And you want to try and straight line this short run down towards turn 6 hairpin. So we're coming into the slowest part of the track now. We're going to be shifting from 3rd gear down into 1st. And it's a relatively short braking zone and it's relatively heavy, but you want to get all your braking done and make sure that the car is slowed down to bring yourself in as tight as possible to the inside curb to clip the apex. So doing exactly that, coming into the apex now, it should be roughly a mid to late apex point that we should be clipping. Your apex speed should be about 35 miles per hour, which equates to 55 kilometers per hour. It's probably the slowest corner on the F1 calendar and certainly the slowest corner on this track. So coming out through this point, you basically just want to be really patient on the throttle, as bringing the throttle in will push you out into the barrier on the outside. So once you know that you're not going to clip it, you want to start to accelerate, bring the car immediately over to the left to try and open up turn 7. And as we throw the car in, we should be in 2nd gear. You should be clipping the inside curb on the inside just here. It should be about 60 miles per hour, which equates to 95 kilometers per hour. And you basically just want to be really patient on the throttle as you come out through the corner. You want to start to unwind the wheel and you basically want to try and get as close to the outside barrier as much as possible. Now you're going to give a short spurt of gas as we come down towards turn 8. A short dab on the brakes. Make sure we maintain 2nd gear as we throw it into this corner. You want to be clipping the curb on the inside here about 65 miles per hour, which equates to 105 kilometers per hour. And as you come out through the exit, you want to be starting to bring the throttle back in and you want to try and get as good as run as possible into the tunnel. So coming out through this corner now, unwinding that wheel, we're going to run the curb ever so slightly on the outside, and you're basically going to be full throttle from third gear onwards. You want to drain your curves down to about 50% as you want to try and get a smooth run through the tunnel as possible. Just as we come over the crest and about 80 metres before the corner is our braking point for this tight chicane. We're going to be braking hard and we're going to be shifting down from 7th gear all the way down into 1st. You can use 2nd if you want, and that does help with the traction coming out of the corner, but on this occasion I'm going to be using 1st gear. So staying to the right hand side of the track to try and open up turn 10. Coming in now, you basically want to try and get as close to the barrier on the inside, and you basically want to try and scrub as much speed as possible as you come into this section. Your apex speed here should be about 65 miles per hour, which equates to 105 kilometers per hour, and it's very, very important that you do actually get the car slowed down, ready for turn 11, which is the right hander that immediately follows. If you're running a little bit too deep in here, it's going to compromise your exit. So making sure that the car is slowed down, you basically want to be clipping just to the inside of the curb here. Your apex speed should be about 50 miles per hour, which equates to 80 kilometers per hour. And as you come out through this corner, you're going to be running over the curb. You want to start to bring the throttle back in ever so slightly. You can grab an early 2nd gear if you want to help with the traction, which is not what I do here. But as we come out through, you want to be straight lining the car. You want to drain about 20% of your curves. Bring the car to the right hand side of the track. And you're basically just going to lift off ever so slightly as we come into turn 12 now. You basically just want to throw the car in, and you want to be clipping this apex point as close to the inside wall as much as possible. Your apex speed should be about 130 miles per hour, which equates to 210 kilometers per hour. But as you come out through this point here, you want to start to unwind the wheel, and you actually want to get as close to the outside barrier as possible to try and maximise that speed. Coming through turns 13 and 14 now, relatively simple, just completely flat out. Try and get as close to both curbs. And coming into turn 15 now, our braking point is just at the start of the shadow of the F1 board above us there. You're going to be shifting from 6th gear down into 2nd, and you want to try and get your braking done so you get a nice smooth run through turn 15 and try and get turn 16 as perfect as possible, which is the most important of the two corners. So coming into turn 15 now, you're basically aiming for the red and white curb on the inside. You want to be getting as close to the barrier at this point here. Your apex speed should be about 70 miles per hour, which equates to 110 kilometers per hour. And as you come through this point, you want to be starting to bring the throttle in ever so slightly, just balancing it maybe as we continue through. You're basically just going to straight line it through towards the apex of turn 16. So aiming for that bollard on the inside, you actually want to go to the right hand side of the bollard. You want to actually avoid it as well, and basically just run the curb on the inside here. Your apex speed should be about 70 miles per hour, which equates to 110 kilometers per hour. And like I said, you should be on the throttle at this point. Should be about 20-30% as you continue through the corner. Unwind the wheel, get full throttle as you get a very short run down towards turn 17 and then the hairpin of 18. So turn 17, the track goes a little bit darker at the braking point. You should be shifting from 4th gear down into 1st gear. You want to try and get all your braking done as it's quite easy to lock a wheel coming through either both turn 17 and turn 18. So getting the car slowed down, you want to avoid the first apex. You want to then come in tight for the second part of the hairpin, and you should be clipping the red and white curbing and getting as close to the barrier on the inside here as much as possible. Your apex speed should be about 45 miles per hour, which equates to 70 kilometers per hour. And from here on out, you should be starting to bring the throttle in ever so slightly, starting to balance in it. Let the car run to the outside of the track. Get as close to the wall on the outside as possible as we get a very short run down towards turn 19. A braking point is at the shadow of the trees here. You can just basically be staying in 2nd gear throughout the duration of this braking zone. It's a very, very short braking zone, but to try and get the car nice and slowed down, ready for turn 19. You basically want to swing in relatively late. Try and open up the second part as you come in towards the inside curb now. You basically want to be getting as close to the barrier on the inside here as much as possible. Clipping that red and white curbing, your apex speed should be about 65 miles per hour, which equates to 105 kilometers per hour. From here on out, you should be balancing the throttle again, and basically as you straighten up the wheel and point towards the start-finish line, you want to bring the throttle in harder, open up the DRS and drain the rest of the curves as you hang towards the right-hand side of the track to complete the lap of Monaco. So that is the breakdown complete, and we're now going to move on to the hot lap, which is exactly the same lap that I just used there, just completely unedited with the raw sound turned up so you guys can hear my throttle inputs and get a general sense of the speed. So now that you've seen the dry hot lap, let's move on to a wet one. As you gain control of the car, we're going to keep the brake bias into neutral for pretty much the entire duration of this lap. Coming into the final corner, you should be in second gear. Coming out through the exit, you want to start draining the curves, bring the car over to the left hand side, ready to open up turn 1. You should be braking about pretty much the same point as the dry hot lap. Run the curb on the inside, get a nice smooth run. Coming out through the exit, again draining about 10% of the curves as you come up through turn 2, now into turn 3. Pretty much exactly the same line, just balance the throttle, try and keep a nice tight line through the duration of both corners as we come now into turn 5. Hooking up the apex quite nicely, try and not let the car step out on the rear. As you come into turn 6, you want to try and get as close to the curb on the inside as possible. Coming in through turn 7 now, just be very, very patient on the throttle again through turn 8. You're going to try and maximise the speed coming out of here, start draining the curves as you come through the tunnel. It's completely dry through this point, and we're coming now down towards turn 10. Braking point is exactly the same point as it was before, just as you go over the crest. Make sure to get the car slowed down though. Watch the wheel spin coming out through the exit of the chicane. Coming into turn 12 now, shift down a gear into 4th. Coming through into turn 15 and 16, again second gear. Be very patient on the throttle through the exit. Now braking about 5-10 meters earlier than they did before. Try and hook up that second apex there. Coming into the final corner now, again being patient on the throttle on the exit. Come across the start finish line with pretty much an identical lap to the dry. So now that's the wet lap complete, we're now going to move on to the setups. And kicking off with the dry setup that I used, wing angles are a 3 and a 5. Going into the braking, it's a 48-52 on balance, medium and standard on pressure and size. Balance on the front is a 9 and a 8 on the rear. Suspension ride heights are 1-1 and then a 9 on front spring stiffness and then a 1 on rear. These are the gear ratios that I was using in miles per hour for the dry and then again in kilometers per hour. And then coming into the camber and toe settings, all the way to the left in the camber, 1 to the left in the rear, and then toe 2 to the right and 1 to the right. So coming into the wet lap now, it was a 4-5 on wing angles. Brake setup is pretty much exactly the same as a driver, 48 medium standard. Balance of the car is a flat 7-7. And then suspension ride heights are 1-1, and then 7 on front spring stiffness, and then 1 on the rear. These were the gear ratios that I was using in the dry in miles per hour, then again in kilometers per hour, and then finally the camber and toe settings, which were exactly the same as the dry lap. So that's going to conclude the in-depth track guide of Monaco. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please give it a rating. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. I shall hopefully see you soon, guys. Take care.